Hello, I put a comment on a Facebook page a few days back talking about an article in an email that had got my attention. And the article concerned dogs that are lunging, pulling, reacting towards other dogs when they're on a lead, when the owner takes them out for a lead. And I opened it up out of interest because like anybody, you get bombarded with these things. So I just thought, oh, let's have a look what they're saying. So I had a look through, and it's frustrating to see the same things being pumped out again and again and again. And so what I said that I'd do and what I will do is I'm going to talk through this article. Okay, I've got it on the it's on the computer in front of me here. Okay, so I'm reading it as I go, and I'm going to pick out the points in there which I believe are detrimental to the ownership, the relationship between the owner and the dog, and why you will struggle to achieve your aims by following advice such as this. So excuse me if I glance down, but I'm going to read and stop and pause on each part as I come to it. First of all, it says how to stop your dog barking and lunging at other dogs. Okay, so if I've got a reactive dog, what I'd term to be an aggressive dog, or an uncontrollable dog, then that's going to draw me in. I want to read that. And it tells me about how some dogs, they just want to say a friendly hello, and they've got no problem playing nicely with other dogs, whereas other ones, usually rooted from fear or lack of socialisation, they'll bark or lunge at other dogs. However, with time and patience and practice, you can help curb this behaviour. I mentioned that earlier on, which is great because I'll just sit back and, let it take care of itself. Here's the thing, okay, here's the first thing that always jumps out at me with advice like this. First, work at home or just outside of your home to change how your dog reacts to other dogs. Okay, so don't really go anywhere or do anything where there might be dogs. Work outside of your home. As mentioned above, your dog will typically bark or lunge at other dogs because he or she is scared. Okay, so we're assuming that it's a fear-based behaviour, and that's the reason why the dog is doing it. So there's an assumption number one. In order to change your dog's response to other dogs, start working with your dog standing still at the distance where he can see another dog without reacting. Okay, pretty sound advice. Get the dog's in a nice calm state of mind, and he's not reacting to the dog. Give your dog extra special treats the moment he sees the other dog, and stop the treats when either the dog leaves or you and your dog walk away. Okay, so somebody's advising counter conditioning, so that what the dog fears and needs to aggress towards in order to remove it, we're saying, well, no, the presentation of other dogs is actually great. It means extra special tasty treats. So we can see where we're going there. This exercise will help change your dog's association with other dogs from one of fear to one of rewards. Okay, so here's the first thing. Here's the first thing that I have an issue with. That is a huge assumption that by giving a dog food when it's at distance from another dog and at a point where it isn't reacting, that I will be changing my dog's association to other dogs from one of fear to one of rewards. It takes a lot more than that. It's like saying that you're afraid of flying, so I'll take you to, 2 miles out of an airport where you can see an aeroplane in the sky and I'll feed you. And I'm now making you think, hey, aeroplanes are fantastic. They're not actually things to be fearful of at all. They're fantastic. I'll get food when I see an aeroplane. Exactly the same principle. If your dog starts to bark and lunge, you are too close and need to move back. Okay, so what you've basically done is allow the dog to rehearse the thing that you're trying to eliminate, which basically shows your dog that even if you've been feeding food and it's great, I now move forward and I bark and I lunge. Okay, so I've basically got two. I still do the thing that I've been doing. I can get rewards as well when I'm at this distance, but when I move in, I can rehearse the thing that I've been doing because you've got too close. So now you need to move back. When your dog becomes comfortable at a given distance, you can try getting 5 feet closer. If you move too close too fast, you may see backsliding. So going back again to where the dog starts reacting, so you need to move backwards. Since you'll be using lots of treats during this process, break the treats into tiny pea-sized pieces. Feed your dog one tiny piece after another, and remember to reduce what you give him for meals. We don't want overweight dogs. Second largest health problem facing dogs in Britain today. Repeat above, and when you feel comfortable, take your dog out on a real walk. Now, that's the first major thing. Okay, we've talked about the counter conditioning and the fact that, the aeroplane and the food or whatever. Repeat above, and when you feel comfortable, take your dog out on a real walk. Now, if you've got, name it, bloody Chihuahua to a Dane to a whatever. If you've got a dog that you are not walking because you don't feel comfortable, you're creating a huge amount of problems. Not you personally, but the situation has created a huge amount of problems. There's advice being given that you need to follow these procedures, but not take your dog on a real walk until you feel comfortable. Yet we're also saying that it takes patience and time in order to develop this. So let's say it takes 3 weeks before I have an overly fearfully reactive dog, if we want to take this diagnosis, and I've now gone 3 weeks without giving that dog a walk because I don't feel comfortable. So the advice is basically not to exercise my dog so far. Practice taking your dog on walks. Practice taking your dog for a walk. Use each walk as not only exercise for your dog, but as a training session. Sound advice. Take your dog for a walk, do some training while you're going along. Absolutely sound advice. Try to use some to the below, I don't know what that means, not just when you see other dogs, but all time to reinforce a behaviour. The more unpredictable you are, the more your dog will focus on you instead of looking ahead for what's out there. And always bring treats along to help reinforce the behaviour you've been practicing. Okay, there is absolutely no difference in bringing treats along to help reinforce the behaviour that I've been practicing as there is using a slip lead to help dink the dog that moves forward for the behaviour that I've been practicing, or a remote collar, or the word no, or the word hit, whatever. If I'm having to continually take something or continually rely on the presentation of something to, and we're saying about reinforce the behaviour, then at some point that has to stop. I have to stop that at some point. I can't continue to reinforce, it has to become learned. And when it becomes learned, it becomes reliant. And when it becomes reliant, it becomes not reliant on the presentation of food or the presentation of some other stimulus that I've used to teach it. So the idea of like that you always need to take along tasty treats with you to help reinforce the behaviour that you've been practicing would basically lends itself to the fact that the dog is working for food. It's not working as a result of understanding what it is that you're trying to teach. That's a massive problem that a lot of people fail to grasp, is when to fade food. And I like the fact of becoming unpredictable. Yes, place your rewards on a random reinforcement schedule. That's absolutely fine. But this reliance on always take along your tasty treats is something that I do have issue with. Get this one, okay? Avoidance is the easiest way to avoid barks and lunges. Seriously. The easiest thing to do is, of course, to avoid other dogs and try to take your dog out at different times. Whilst this isn't addressing the issue, okay, we agree on something, it can be useful if your dog isn't responding the way you like on a particular day and you want to get a quick walk done. So basically, if my advice fails, if the advice that I'm putting forward to you fails, take your dog out when there's no other dogs. Join the 5 AM club, and I know a few people who've been in that. Or the midnight club. I'll take my dog for a walk at midnight when there's nobody else there. That way it's going to be nice and I can get it done. I'm avoiding it entirely. But this is basically saying avoidance is fine. You know, if your dog isn't responding to the training that I'm recommending, just avoid it. Still practice saying his name and giving your dog treats. So we're treating the dog for nothing now, really, just for understanding his name. It's got nothing to do with the counter conditioning or desensitisation towards the presence of other dogs or lunging or reactivity. We're just doing it for saying his name. You need to train your dog that good things can happen on walks. You need a new certain phrase or signal when walking your dog that something good is about to happen. No problem with that. Verbal marking, clicker training, absolutely fine. We owners can get anxious when we walk our dogs and alert to them that something bad is going to happen when we see another dog on our walks. We panic, raise our voice, tighten or yank back on the leash. Try to change that into positive by practicing a good phrase as you retain yourself, as you retrain yourself as well as your dog. At home, practice your phrase. Every time you say it, give your dog treats and attention, even a toy. Your dog will look at you when you say this phrase and away from any diversion that might occur. Right, so we've got a dog who we're training with our rewards because they've got this fearful response and they've got a threshold, they've got a proximity which we can't breach because otherwise they're going to go into their lunging behaviours. So if we find ourselves struggling with that, then the easiest thing to do is to avoid it altogether and walk ourselves or our dog when there aren't any other dogs about. But if we teach them a happy phrase, your dog will look at you when you say this phrase and away from any diversion that might occur. So you just teach a happy phrase, you're sorted. I disagree. Get this. Be ready to turn and walk in a different direction. How many times have you, there's got to be people who've heard this. There's got to be people who've heard this. There are times when you just need to get out of the way. There are times when you just need to get out of the way. When you're walking and suddenly encounter something that is too stimulating for your dog, a very big dog, or maybe a group of joggers. Okay, so your dog's transferred its lack of socialization, fear towards other dogs now onto a group of joggers. You need to turn the opposite direction quickly. Walk your hands up your leash without pulling towards your dog. Heaven forbid you pull. If you pull, you're cruel. Towards your dog. When you get to your dog's shoulder, turn into your dog with your legs and hip to help him turn around. Okay, so your dog doesn't understand what this way means, or heel. If your dog is on your right, you turn into him on your right. If your dog is on your left, you turn into him on your left. There's something for the simple-minded who can't understand what turn into your dog means. Take the entire time you are turning around him and treats. Talk the entire time you are turning him around, and treats are handy at this point. Okay, so I need to change direction because somebody's come in. So I'm going to talk to my dog all the time as I turn around and feed them. Because I'm reinforcing what? Exactly. Because what's theoretically, if this training advice is true, then if my dog is walking along and he's on a long lead and he's up ahead of me and he sees a group of joggers, he ought to turn around and head the other direction, because that's what I've taught him to do. If this training is true, if this training sticks, that's what's going to happen. My dog's going to see joggers and go in the opposite direction. Okay, try to avoid. Here we go. It's the avoidance again. Look, we've turned around. We've said avoid. Okay, so we've used it in its broadest sense. We've said, okay, avoid, so go when there's no dogs. Then we've said turn and walk in a different direction. Avoid. Try to avoid walking directly towards another dog when out on walk. When out on walks. Okay, so if you take your dog to a park where there's dogs around, God knows what direction you're going to be heading in, because you can't walk in the same direction, can't walk head on towards them. A dog that walks directly towards another dog is considered rude or even a threat in the dog world. Is it? I can't see any citations here, so I don't know where this trainer is pulling this stuff from. So if a dog walks towards another one, it's rude or a threat. However, we put our dogs in this position, your fault, nice bit of blame, good. So it's nothing to do with the fact that the training's shite or because the dog is poorly socialised at this point. You put your dog into this position by walking on sidewalks. Our dog then feels the need to defend himself. Nice bit of justification. It's my fault because society has built sidewalks and I now have to walk my dog on it, and it's rude to walk towards dogs that are coming in the opposite direction. So my dog now has to defend himself, and humans label our dog as aggressive. Do you see where I'm going with it? Do you see? Try to practice Try to practice walking on an arc away from the other dog, as though you're walking along a curve. There's another bit of avoidance for you, but this time we're not going to turn into our dog. We're not going to avoid it altogether. We're not going to talk to him, feed him while we're doing it. We're going in an arc now, because that's completely different. There we see. There is also no rules to say that you have to walk on sidewalks, streets, or paths. If you can walk in an open area, that works great too. Well, that's superb if you live in the middle of central London, isn't it? Where unfortunately you don't have a great deal of choice, because unless you're going to walk down the middle of the road or you're going to, goodness knows what, levitate, you have to walk down a pavement, and your dog has to be able to walk nicely along with you. Shake it up on your walks to keep your dog entertained. When you're out on walks, try to shake it up. I don't know what that means. I think it means random. By changing your pace and direction. Go slowly, speed up, cross the street, and then start again. Now, I don't know about you, but if I take my dog out and I want to go and get a newspaper or a pint of milk or whatever else, I don't want to be crossing the street and shaking it up because I can't walk my dog straight down a pavement because my dog won't behave on a lead. Try a different route which will feel new to your dog, but keep up with the training. Avoidance. Try a different route. Avoidance. It's your fault. You're going the wrong way. You're going the way that your dog knows isn't very nice. Go a different way. As always, practice makes perfect. Brackets, most honest bit in here, or almost. Yes, that is almost. as does repetition of the lessons learned, which in this instance is to avoid any potential situation where your dog might see another dog. If you have treats handy, shake up the walks and know what to do where there is a real oncoming threat. So even following your training, at the end of the day, it's a known oncoming threat. So if it's a threat, what has your training achieved in reducing the level of that threat and building confidence and competence into the dog to be able to walk in a human and dog dense society in a well-mannered fashion? Well, shake it up, the oncoming threat. You and your dog will learn how to teach your dog to avoid barking or lunging at other dogs. There you go. There's the article that I read, and hopefully you can see, I don't know how red I've gone, but sadly, on a serious point, that is something that is peddled again and again and again. And really, it's poor. It's very, very poor advice, and it is indicative of somebody who is struggling to cope with a dog that is reactive when it's on a lead, where I say aggressive, or whether it's poorly mannered, whether it pulls, whether it lunges, whatever it does, whether it jumps up and nips your clothing. To say feed it in an attempt and keep changing directions and to avoid avoidance, basically the whole thing is avoidance, is appalling, and people pay for that advice. So there you go. I said I'd stick it on. I'd be interested in hearing your comments on it. Cheers, thank you.